Hello everyone, this is Rajendra, and in this particular video we are going to talk about some more advanced concept of the Docker, and we are going to deep dive on each and every concept. Okay, in before video, okay, the Docker video that we have recorded just before this, we saw some Docker concepts, okay, but that we saw just conceptually. In this particular video we are going to deep dive on each and every concept. Okay, whatever we have covered, like difference between virtualization and containerization, then the Docker architecture, and we are going to do some hands-on as well. Now let's talk about some concepts about Docker container internals. Okay, so first, if you see at the top, it's a Linux kernel. Okay, so inside Linux kernel we have some components like storage, namespace, C groups, security, and networking. Okay, so what all components are involved? In storage we have a device mappers, okay, then file systems, AU file system, BT file system. Okay, so what all those are very specific file systems are there, and then there is a device mapper to interact with those file systems. Okay, why we are talking storage here? Because when we start the containers, okay, in the Docker, so those containers are using storage. Okay, so with the help of this device mapper they can use the internal storage of the device, okay, or the host machine. Now let's talk about the namespaces. So what these namespaces are doing are, they are isolating your process or your container. Okay, so how they are doing it? With the help of process IDs, with the help of mounting, with the help of inter-process communication, with the help of network. Okay, so all these components are internally used by the namespaces, and they are just isolating your complete container. Okay, then let's talk about the C groups. What is C groups? C groups will help us to manage the system resources for our container. Okay, so system resources like CPU, memory, devices, okay, all these resources are properly managed by C groups and then assigned to the your container. Okay, now if I talk about the security, then there are concepts in Linux like SC Linux security component. Okay, so using these concepts we provide the security to the containers. Okay, and if we talk about the networking, how we give the network to the container is using virtual Ethernet, using bridge, and by adding some modification in the IP tables. Okay, now let's see one by one. So containers are method of operating system virtualization that allow you to run application and its dependencies in resource isolated process. Okay, so that means they just virtualize the operating system and then they isolate your processes and its dependencies by running the application inside container. Now container allow you to easily package an application, okay, configuration and dependency into easy to use building blocks, and that application can be deployed quickly and consistently regardless of deployment environment, right? Because as we discussed in the last video earlier, how the development was happening is developer has to take care of the production environment, right? Means they have to make sure that the code they are developing is will work in the production environment, what all the operating system or all whatever the requirement they are going to use. Okay, but in case of Docker we don't need to worry about all these topics, right? What they have to do is we have to just take care about the application, and then whatever the environment that we are using to develop the application, the same environment we are just pushing with the application while giving the application to the client, right? So due to this reason we don't have to worry about the all this, right? So that you can easily deploy your application. Now Linux kernel feature that create the walls between container and other processes running on the host. Okay, to understand the containers we have to start with the Linux group and namespaces and file system. So what is Linux namespaces? Wrap a set of system resources and present them to a process to make it look like they are dedicated to that process. Okay, means even though we are sharing the resources, but still with the help of namespaces we are, means the process, that is the application running inside that container, feeling that I have a dedicated resources. Okay, now what is C groups? C groups governs the isolation and usage of system resources such as CPU, memory for group of processes. Example, if you have an application that takes a lot of CPU cycle and memory, such as scientific computing application, you can put the application in a C group to limit a CPU and memory usage. Like if you have any application which is taking too much memory or the CPU, in that case we can put that application in the C group, so that what will happen, automatically this C group will add a capping on the usage of the resources, right? Now in short, what we can see is namespaces deals with the resource isolation for single process, and C group manages the resources of a group of processes. Okay, now let's talk about the virtualization. Okay, as we discussed here in the previous video, we know that how virtual machines are used. Okay, on the host operating system we install the hypervisor, and with the help of hypervisor we start the multiple guest OS we can start, and inside that guest OS we can install the application and the dependencies. Okay, so what are the advantages of this? We can have a multiple operating system in a same machine, easy to maintain. Okay, because with the help of hypervisor we can easy to maintain and recover the this guest OSs, and then again it will lower the cost of ownership. But there are some disadvantages as well. Due to multiple VMs, it leads to unstable performance. Why? Because if we have a multiple VMs inside it, again they are taking too much resources. Okay, and then that is why sometimes if images get crashed, automatically that becomes unstable. Now again here if you see, this hypervisor is starting the new guest OS. Okay, so if you see, even though we have a guest OS, complete different OS, but still it will not work exactly same like your host OS. Okay, so that is the reason there are some disadvantages as well by using hypervisors. Now the next disadvantage is that long boot up process, right? Means this is a complete operating system we are launching inside the hypervisor or the VA virtual machine, so it will take some time, and that's the reason it's a long boot up time. Okay, now let's talk about the containerized. Okay, so if you see, virtualization is doing the it's doing virtualization at the infrastructure level, but container is doing the virtualization at the OS level. Okay, now if you see, we already discussed that how we do is, on the host machine we install the Docker engine, that is a container engine, and then isolated container we can start. Okay, and inside that container we start the application and the provide the dependency libraries. Okay, so what are the advantages of this container environment over virtualization is that container on same OS kernel are lighter and smaller. Okay, so we are launching the container on the same host OS. Okay, and those are lighter and smaller, and they are using resources in a better way, so that resources won't get wasted. Okay, now short boot up process. If you see, for container to boot up it takes only 1/20th of a second. Okay, that means only 0.02% of time, 0.02 seconds. Okay, now let's talk about the Docker. So what this Docker is doing, Docker is helping us to launch the container. Okay, so what is the definition? Docker is a containerization platform which packages your application and all its dependencies together in the form of containers so as to ensure that your application works seamlessly in any environment, be it a development or a test or a production. Okay, so with our application we are also bundling the required libraries, operating system. Okay, so everything we are bundling it, creating image, and then we are running that image as a container. Okay, so due to this the application will run seamlessly in all the environments, whether it's a production, development, or a test. Okay, now if you just want to differentiate the virtual machine and Docker, if you see with the integration, if you talk about the integration is very easy with Docker, but in case of a virtual machine, it is integrating something inside virtual machine is a really headache. Okay, and now if we talk about the startup time, the startup time of the virtual machine is like a tortoise. Okay, and the startup time, if you see for the Docker, it's in just a milliseconds. Okay, then size, if you see just as the image, it takes like elephant like size, but here if you see it's a something like a mouse like a size. Okay, it takes very less size as compared to the virtual machines. Now let's deep dive into the Docker, how this usage of memory. Okay, now let's talk about the virtual machines first. So now if you see we have a total 16 GB of RAM. Okay, now let's say I start 3 VMs inside that host machine, and then if I assign 6 GB, okay, if I assign 6 GB to the first virtual machine, 4 GB to the second machine, and then 6 GB to the third VMs. Okay, now but in fact the first VM is using only 2 GB, second VM is using 1 GB, and the third VM is using 4 GB. Okay, so out of 16 GB, only 9 GB is used by all the VMs. Okay, so total 7 GB is getting wasted. Okay, but it's wasted and it's getting blocked and cannot be alerted to the new virtual machine. Okay, because once in the virtual machine environment, once you assign the memory to the VM, okay, and if your VM is running, in that case you cannot assign that same memory to other virtual machine. The only way you can do is you can stop that virtual machine, reduce the memory, and then you can use it to the another one. Okay, so here we are wasting lot of resources. Okay, now let's talk about the container. So now here in the Docker environment, what we do is, let's say I have a 16 GB RAM. Now what I'll do, I'll allocate 4 GB RAM to the first app, 35 to the, sorry, it's a 3 GB to the app 2, and okay, here what I'm doing, 4. Okay, so here is something wrong with the image. I'll modify that. So out of 16 GB we are using only 9 GB, and the other remaining memory we can use for the new container. Okay, so here we are not wasting any memory. Okay, whatever we have assigned, applications will use that, and if the applications are not using that, we can reallocate that memory to the other containers. Okay, now let's see more differences. Okay, so in case of virtual machines, okay, we can have a multiple operating system, separate libraries. Okay, but due to the guest OS that we are installing inside it, it's a heavy. Okay, and due to this heaviness, again it will take more time to start up. Okay, and now in case of a Docker, what we do is, we don't need a multiple operating system. What we do is, on the same operating system we can start multiple containers. We can have a separate libraries for each container, but due to the same operating system, it is just a lightweight, we don't require too much space. Okay, and then again to start the containers, it takes very less time. Okay, now let's talk about how we can integrate in virtual machines. Okay, integration in virtual machine is possible but costly due to the infrastructure requirement. Okay, and not easily scalable. Okay, so if we use multiple virtual machines to deploy the Jenkins or the Ansible or the Git, we can definitely integrate everything inside it, but due to the more infrastructure requirement or the wastage of resources, it's very costly. And also if you want to scale further, in that case also, due to this reason, due to the extra cost, it's not easily scalable. Okay, now let's talk about who all can use the Docker. Okay, so if we know that Docker is now mostly used in the okay, so who all can use this is the Docker is designed to benefit both developers as well as system administrator. Okay, and nowadays it is making it a part of a many DevOps toolchain as well, right? So developer can easily develop their code and easily can deploy on the Docker and see if it is everything is running fine. Okay, tester can use the Docker to see again your application is running or not, and again operation team always can use it, right? Sysadmin need not worry about infrastructure as Docker can easily scale up, scale down the number of system, right? So for operation team, they have to take care like whether this, how we can scale this application, how we can scale down. Okay, so Docker is really helping the operation team in that process. Okay, so Docker can be used in the development, testing, as well as in the production environment, right? So if we talk about in simple terms, what Docker does is build, ship and run and then monitor. Okay, so that means build your application, ship that, run that, and you can keep monitoring. Okay, so all this feature is provided by Docker. Now how is Docker used in the DevOps? Okay, nowadays DevOps is the leading field in the IT industry, right? Because every team, every project requires the DevOps team, okay, or the DevOps people to work with them. Okay, so how this Docker is used in the DevOps? Okay, so let's see from the left to right. So what developer does, developer develop their code, push into the version control system, that is Git. Okay, and then with the help of Jenkins, what we do is we can run those jobs or run those code. Okay, but how we run this? With the help of containerization. Okay, that means Docker. So what we are doing, containerization, it consists of an entire runtime environment, an application, all its dependencies, library and other binaries, and the configuration files needed to run it, bundled into one package. Okay, now in the testing process we use the Docker. Again with the help of Jenkins, in the deployment process as well we use the Docker. Okay, and then with the help of Ansible or the Nagios, we can with the help of Ansible we can create our infrastructure, or to deploy we can use the Ansible, and then for monitoring purpose we can Nagios we can use, and we can monitor application. Okay, so mostly in the CI/CD pipeline Docker is very useful. Okay, and it can be used. Okay, now so what is Docker images and containers? Okay, so what is Docker images? Docker image is nothing but the snapshot. Okay, snapshot of your running application. Okay, now in this particular snapshot there is a OS, there are all dependent libraries and your application. Okay, so we create a snapshot, that is nothing but an image, and when we run this image, that becomes a containers. Okay, so how we run is we use the Docker to run that image. Okay, now what is this image? Is a read-only template used to create a containers, built by Docker users, stored in the Docker Hub or your local registry. Now this is a snapshot. Okay, every Docker user can do that, and we can store this Docker image on the Docker Hub. Okay, Docker Hub is nothing but one repo where we can store the images. Okay, and once we build it, after building we can push that image to the Docker Hub, so it will be available for everybody. Okay, and then we can pull that and we can start our containers. So what is this containers? Containers are isolated application platform, contains everything needed to run the application, built from one or more images. Okay, we can have multiple images as well inside the containers. Okay, now let's talk about the Docker registry. Okay, so what is this Docker registry? Is a storage component for Docker image. Okay, right, there should be there should be a location where we can store our images, so that next time whenever we need, we can just pull out the images and we can start the container. Okay, we can store the images in either public or a private repository. If we store in the public repository, it will be available for everybody. If we store it in the private repository, we can only having the access for that repository can access it. Okay, now Docker Hub is a Docker's very own cloud repository. Okay, so we have already a public repository called Docker Hub where everybody can store the images. Okay, now why use Docker registries? Okay, with the help of Docker registries we can control where your images are being stored. Okay, and we can integrate image storage with your in-house development workflow. Okay, so that is the main reason we need to have a registries, and we can store all the images there. Okay, now let's see the Docker architecture. Okay, how this Docker architecture is and how we can use it. Okay, now we have a Docker host. Okay, Docker host is nothing but the machine where we start the containers. Okay, now on that machine we have a Docker daemon installed. Okay, that is nothing but a Docker server, we call it is. Okay, and this Docker daemon or Docker server will help us to start the containers. Okay, but to interact with that Docker daemon or Docker server, we need a Docker client. Okay, so this left hand side is a Docker client. We can have a Docker client as well as Docker server on the same machine. Okay, now when we want to create an image, what we can do is we can use the command docker build. Okay, if we use the docker build command, it will go to the server. Okay, it will call to the server. Okay, and on the server machine we can build the image. Okay, now once the image is built, we can use the push command, docker push, and push that image onto the registry. Okay, so now once that is done, okay, once the image is pushed, now if you want to pull that image, okay, to start the container. Okay, so in that case what we can do is we can hit the command docker pull. It will go to the server. From server it will go to the registry, pull that image, whatever the name we have given, and it will pull that image on your Docker host machine. Okay, and when you hit docker run command, it will go to the server. It will first check whether the image is there on your Docker host. If it is there, it will start the container. Okay, if it is not there, it will go to the registry, pull that image, and then it will start your container. Okay, so this is how your typical Docker architecture will work. Okay, now let's see some basic Docker commands. Okay, so as discussed in the previous slide, okay, to pull a Docker image from the Docker Hub, we can use the docker pull command. Okay, so how we can do this? Docker pull image name and the tag. Okay, so what is tag? Tag is nothing but the version of the image. We can have a multiple version of the same image. That means, let's say first you have developed something. Okay, you created image, we can name it as a 1.0 version. Again, if you do some modification in your application, we can again create image. We can give the 1.1 version. Again, if you do something, we can give 1.2. So this way we can have a multiple versions of it, and we can give it as a name as a tag. Okay, so if you want a specific tag or a specific version of your image, in that case we can give the image name and tag. Okay, and if we have Docker Hub repository as well, in that case you can give the repository name / image name as well. Okay, now if you want to run the container, in that case again we have a docker run command, and again to run that container we have to give the image name, okay, from which image we want to start the container, and then use the image name / tag. Okay, now again you can use the image ID as well. How we can get the image? We have a docker images command. It will give us all the images and their IDs. Okay, so with the help of IDs as well you can start the container. Now to list down all the images in our system, we can give the docker images command. To list down all the running container, if you want to see all the running container, you can use the docker ps command. Okay, now only running containers will be shown by docker ps. If you want to see all the containers, whether it's running, stop or exited, you can use the docker ps -e. Okay, now let's talk about how we can build the images. Okay, now images can be built, okay, using multiple layers. Okay, that means it has multiple layers. Why multiple layers? Because let's say to build the image, first we need to write a docker file. Okay, now inside that docker file we have to give some steps. Like in first step, what I want is I want a basic Ubuntu version. Okay, in this next is I want to do apt-get update. Okay, to update all the packages. Okay, now in the next step what I want to do is install the git on that machine. Okay, next step what I want to do is I have some requirement for my application. Let's say I have a web application, it requires Flask and Redis. Okay, so I need to install those two applications or the two modules. Now after that what I want to do is I want to copy my application from host machine to the inside the docker images. Again we can to hit the docker command, copy command. After that I want to run my application whenever. So what we have to give the entry point. That means as and when you run this image, okay, there should be something that should be started. Okay, so that is nothing but our application should be started. So for that we need to give the entry point. Entry point is nothing but, let's say I have an application and it should be run by main.py or something. If Python application is there and I want to run this, so I'll do Python main.py. Okay, so this will be our entry point. Okay, so these are some steps that we have to write. Okay, and then these steps are nothing but the layers. Okay, so let's say you build this image. Okay, and once build, again if you do some changes in the code, okay, so we know that we copied the code on the fourth step. Okay, so if you change something and then if you build it, only your image will be rebuilt only from the fourth step. It will not rebuild first three steps again. Why? Because there is no change in that. That's why it is building only the next two steps. Okay, so why this is required? Because it will surely reduce your build time. Okay, now each layer is an image of its own. Okay, that means when you build it, okay, they have already a copy of that, and when you retry to build, if that copy is there, it will not rebuild that particular layer. Now they comprise of a base image layer which is read only. Any changes made to an image are saved as a layers on top of the base image layer. Okay, containers are generated by running the image layers which are stacked one above the other. Okay, so that is what we talked. Like we have some different steps. As and when you change any steps, then only it will be rebuilt on top of the base layer. Okay, now so what they are saying, we have only earlier we have some base image layer. Okay, so if you see in the bottom we have a single image layer or the read only image layer. On top of that we can add writable image layer. Okay, and then finally after that we can finally start it, and that becomes a container. Okay, now now to write the Docker file we need to follow some instruction. Okay, I have also given the instructions here from where we can get all this information, but for now whatever the important commands are there that we have to add in the every Docker compose file or the every Docker file I have given here. Okay, so let's say the first one, that is first instruction is a from instruction. Okay, and there we have to give the image and tag. Okay, so that means if we have any base image from there, you want to build your image, that also we can give using a from. Okay, from image name colon tag tells Docker what will be the base for the image being created. Okay, so we have the base image. Let's say I want to create a web application and I want to deploy that on the Ubuntu machine. So in that case the Ubuntu machine will be my base layer. Okay, now next instruction is add. What this add is doing, it will copy the files from the source on the host into the Docker image's own file system. Okay, at the desired destination, command is not only about copying files from the local file system, you can use it to get the file from the network as well. Okay, so add command is used to copy the data from the host machine to the inside the Docker, or copy it from the some network as well. Okay, from network location as well. Now the next command we have is a copy. Okay, it will copy new files or directories from source path and adds them to the file system of the container at the destination path. Okay, usually it's a current directory. Now again we have some instruction called command or entry point. So command means once you start the container, okay, what command you want to execute. Okay, that means as and when your container start, it will whatever the command that you have given inside this cmd instruction, it will start. Okay, and we can have multiple parameters for the command as well. Okay, and then entry point is again same, like entry point we give when we have any executable file you want to run it. Okay, and if you have already any command, system level command you want to run, in that case you can use the cmd instruction, or you can use the run as well. It will execute the, so this run command will execute any instruction. Okay, this command and entry point also can be used. Now this expose instruction informs Docker that the container listens on the specified network ports. Okay, if you want to expose any port of the container, because by default all the ports of the container are blocked. Okay, not open, it's closed. So if you want to open any ports so that you can access the application, in that case you can use the expose command. Okay, now let's talk about the Docker networking. Okay, so Linux network namespaces. Okay, so in Docker how the networking works. So basically there are 3 points, okay, we need to discuss is the network interfaces, routing tables, and the firewall rules. Okay, now let's say this box is a Linux machine, and we know that how we are separating out our container is using the namespace. Okay, so we have one blue namespace, we have a red namespace. Okay, now how we can provide the internet between these two namespaces or the two containers? We should have some interfaces, network interfaces, so through that only they can interact. Okay, and to interact, to provide the path to them, we create a virtual Ethernet pair. Okay, that means we create a virtual Ethernets through which these two containers can interact. Okay, now let's see here. Okay, how the container networking model looks like. Okay, so here what we have is we have a host machine. On the host machine we have some network infrastructure. There are some network drivers are there. On top of that, our network engine works, Docker engine works. So Docker engine creates a different networks. Let's say bridge network or the host network it creates, and then on this network we start the container. Okay, but for that container we need to create some endpoint that is nothing but the virtual ethernet is, and that's we call it as endpoint. Okay, and then if you see every container has a network sandbox. That means they cannot interact outside of this network sandbox, right? If you want to interact with any other, we have to go through only endpoint. Okay, that is nothing but a ethernet, network ethernets. Okay, and if that network is connected to any other container, then with those endpoints only, whatever the endpoint that we have exposed, through those endpoints only we can interact with the other containers. Okay, directly no, not even a single container can talk with any other, right? Now again here if you see there are three different network sandbox and three different containers are there, and if you want to interact with each other, then those containers should be on the same network. Okay, so let's say this is my X network, this is my Y network. Now directly this X network container cannot interact with the Y network container. Okay, so how we can do that? Either launch these two containers on the same network or create one more container. Okay, or and add two different interfaces and then connect those interfaces to two different networks, and either this is the way, or again create a two different network interfaces on these two net containers and attach those containers on each other's network. Okay, so in that case that is feasible. Now let's see one more thing. So if you see here, what we are doing is we have a Docker network runtime and we have a container network model. So there are different types of networks, like we have a none network, bridge and overlay. What this none network is, that means if you connect any container to this none network, it will not be accessed outside your host machine. Okay, that means for that container will not have any network. Okay, now if we start any container on the bridge network, so this bridge network is having the same network of your host machine. Okay, and then there is a next type called overlay. Okay, so these are all these are built-in networks. Okay, built-in networks for all the Docker. Whenever you install the Docker, all these networks are already by default created. You can create your own networks as well. Okay, now what is this overlay network means? If we have a containers on two different hosts and if they want to connect to each other, in that case we can use the network type as overlay and they can interact with this overlay network. Okay, now let's say I have a single host. Okay, and then how this, if we start the container on the single host machine, how those interact with the internet. Okay, how two different containers in the same host communicate with each other, how the container communicate with the outside of the Linux host, and how access container from the local Docker host and outside of the Docker host. Okay, so these are the three questions we'll solve here. Okay, okay, so the first question we have, how two different containers in the same host communicate with each other. Okay, now if all these containers are on the same network, they can, with the directly host name, they can directly access each other. Okay, but if they are on the different network, in that case we need to create a different virtual ethernets and then connect those virtual ethernets to each other's network, then only you can interact with each other. Okay, if you want to communicate with outside the Linux host, in that case you have to expose the port. Okay, and then you have to map that container port to your host port, and then from the host port we can access the internet. Okay, now let's see the example here. Okay, so what is happening? These are the two containers want to interact with each other. Okay, it has their own ethernets. Now this own ethernet will be connected to the virtual ethernets. Those are connected to our network, the one network, that is Docker 0, and now they can interact with each other. Okay, and then that bridge or whatever the network that we have created will be connected to our host network. Okay, so this is how it works. Okay, this is how for the single host it will copy the means with this this particular virtual ethernets, it will interact with each other. Okay, now let's say now we have a two different hosts. How two containers located on two different Docker hosts communicate with each other, right? So these are the two containers which are hosted on two different hosts. Okay, how they can communicate. Okay, so here we have a solution is we have to do routing and some tunneling. Okay, so if we see for tunneling, we have overlay network inbuilt, or we can use the OVS, or there are some plugins as well, that is Flannel plugin is there, Vue plugin is there, and for routing we have a Calico, okay, and Contiv. Okay, so this all this any of this plugin we can use to work on this. Okay, now if you have multi-host networking, if you want to do with the help of, if you select the network as overlay, in that case we can, okay, sorry, so we have a, if we have a multi-host networking, in that case if we select the overlay network, it will be able to interact with each other. Okay, now how internally it works, how internally it works is, you can see that this is one host. Okay, for every host there is a Ethernet. So here ETH0 is there. Now this is your container. For that container as well, it will have its own Ethernet, that is 0. It has a different subnet IP. Okay, and then we have a application. Okay, now if you want to send the application data using TCP IP, source is 10.0.0.2, destination is 10.0.0.3, that is this container, source MAC, destination MAC. Okay, now again for this container as well, we have a source 10.0.0.2, destination 10.0.0.3. so this is how it reach. Okay, but how it goes, it will first go to the overlay network. This overlay network will be connected to the Ethernets of both the host. Okay, and now inside this overlay network, what we are doing is, what all details we have is a source MAC, destination MAC. Okay, then UDP, VLAN header, overlay MAC header, overlay IP header, TCP, UDP header, and then application data. Okay, so this overlay network will understand the, because it is connected to two different networks. Okay, even though it is connected to two different networks, but it has all the details required to route the traffic from one network to another. Okay, so it will check the IP header. In the IP header, it will understand what is the source, what is the destination. It will go into the underlay IP header. Okay, and then inside underlay IP header, it will have a source and, okay, because here we have two different packets. Okay, two different headers. In the first header, we have the source and destination of the containers. Okay, and in the underlay IP header, we have a source and destination of the host. Okay, so with this underlay IP header, it will understand on which host I have to pass this. Okay, now this underlay header will be removed here, and it will pass the traffic to this host. Okay, right hand side host B, and then when packet reaches at the ETH0, it has the details of inner subnet. Okay, where the container is launched. Okay, now with the help of this overlay IP header, it will understand that I have to pass the traffic to this C2 container. Even though, let's say on the host B I have multiple containers, but with the help of this overlay IP header, I can understand that I have to, I mean, this host will understand that I have to pass the traffic to this C2 container. Okay, Now let's talk about the Docker Compose now. Till now we're just talking about how we can launch the single container inside the host. Okay, or if you want to write the start the multiple containers, then you need to run multiple docker run commands. But what if in the single command itself you want to run a multiple container? Okay, so to launch multiple containers with a single command, we need a Docker Compose. Okay, so how we can do that? Multi-container apps are a hassle. Okay, that means build images from Docker files, pull images from the hub or private registry, configure and create containers, start and stop container. Okay, this is the procedure that we have to follow to launch every container. Okay, but what if I have a multi-container apps to start? Okay, so for that we have a Docker Compose option. So how this Docker Compose works? We have to pass this Docker Compose will parse the one file. We call it as a YAML file. Okay, inside that YAML file we have to write the means whatever the configuration of a multi-containers. Okay, so inside that YAML we can write multiple container details, and then this, when we pass this file, Docker Compose will parse this file. It will understand what all the containers I need to start, and it will start multiple containers. Okay, so what this Compose is a tool for defining running multi-container Docker application. Okay, that means if you have an application which requires multi-container, for that purpose we can use the Compose, Docker Compose. With Compose you use a Compose file, that is nothing but a YAML file, to configure your application services. Then using a single command you can create and start all the services from your configuration, right? Because earlier with the help of Docker run command we were able to only start the single container. Okay, but with the help of Docker Compose, now even though if your application has multiple containers, okay, still with the help of Docker Compose you can start multiple services. Okay, now let's see the example. Let's say this is my simple Python application where I have a Flask application, and it has also, what it is doing is, it's a simple hello world, hello container world. Okay, this application we are going to see with the practicals as well in the next video. Okay, so here I am just starting one server, and it is just printing, means as and when we connect to this particular application, it is just printing how many times we connected. Okay, but how this is maintaining is using a Redis database. Okay, so this Redis database is another container, this web application is another container. So we are starting this both container in a single go. Okay, with the help of Docker Compose. Okay, now to start this, what all things I need is, I need Flask module and a Redis module to be installed before starting container. That we can give in the requirement.txt. Okay, now this is my Docker file. So we know that we discussed Docker file. Okay, so we discussed one instruction, that is from, that means there is one image called Python, and what is the tag? It is a 2.7 tag. Maintainer is this maintainer is there, copy .app. Okay, that means we are copying this .app to the inside the Docker working directory is app, and then we are installing the required application, that is Flask and Redis. We are exposing the 5000 port, and then what command I need to run as and when container start. Okay, this is the Docker file. We can build Docker file using Docker build, then it will create an image, and then that image will be stored on the Docker hub. Okay, now this is our YAML file. With the help of this YAML file we can start multiple services in a single command. Okay, so here this is the version, multiple services, this tag. Now I have two services, web and Redis. Okay, so this web service, it is mapping the 80 port of your container, 80 port of your host machine to the 5000 port of the container. Okay, and it is linked to the Redis container. Okay, and what the network they are using is the Docker demo bridge network. Okay, and in the Redis as well, it is exposing on the 6379 port, and it is not required to expose outside your container. That's why we are not exposing, we are not mapping it to the host port, and then the network, both are using the same network. Okay, now when we pass this Docker Compose file to the Docker Compose, it will start these two containers, web and Redis, and we are starting on the same container so that they can easily interact. Okay, if you see the app here, you can see that we are connecting to the Redis on the same host. Okay, same machine, sorry, this is the IP, and we are starting this Redis port on the 6379. Okay, now this Docker file will build it. Okay, and now let's talk about the Docker Swarm. Okay, whatever the example that we have seen just before this, we are going to try this example in the next video. We'll show this complete end-to-end example in a practical. Okay, now what is the need of Docker Swarm? Okay, what is the need of Docker Swarm is, the need of Docker Swarm is, if we have multiple containers and if you want to manage those containers, okay, how we generally manage is we use in the Docker CLI. Okay, but if the number of containers gets increased, then the managing those containers is not going to be easy. Okay, so there should be someone who can manage multiple containers at a single point, from the single point. For that we have a Docker Swarm. Okay, we can use the Docker Swarm to manage this. So instead of Docker CLI, different Docker CLI, with the help of Docker Swarm, okay, Docker Swarm provides native clustering capabilities to turn a group of Docker engines into a single, okay, and virtual Docker engines. Okay, that means now earlier we are connecting to each through a Docker CLI, sorry, but now we are making a group of it, and with the Docker Swarm we can just have to interact with the Docker Swarm. It will in the background it will interact with all the Docker host. Now internally how it works, if you see, we have, these are the managers which are interacting with the multiple worker nodes. Worker nodes are nothing but a actual host where containers are launched. Okay, and all these are managed by managers, and then finally we can this wrapped protocol will help us to manage all these workers. Okay, and then we can interact with these managers too, and then this manager internally will interact with the workers. Okay, now in the very beginning we are having a hardware, operating system, and then application. Okay, this is what we have seen. Okay, and then to scale, what we are doing is again add another hardware, another operating system, another app. Okay, this is how we are adding the scaling it and providing the high availability. Okay, but now with virtualization, what we are doing, in the single infrastructure only, we are starting the operating guest OS and then operating system and the app. Okay, with the help of virtualization, this is how we are doing the giving the scaling and high availability. Okay, now with the containerized environment, again what we are doing is, inside in bare metal machine we are starting the virtual machine, and inside virtual machine we are installing Docker, and we can have a multiple containers. Okay, so this type of virtualization we are doing. Okay, now what we can do is, for container orchestration, okay, here what we are doing, from the infrastructure, on the infrastructure we can have a different machine, then operating system, different operating system, different container runtime, and to manage all this container runtime we can have a container orchestration, right? And on top of that orchestration we can have a different apps running on that. Okay, now if you see, go deep and see what is happening inside is this resource management, scheduling, and service management. All these three steps are done by the container orchestration internally. Okay, it will internally talk to all these machines. Okay, it will cumulatively it will show the resources of it, and it will cumulatively schedule the apps on the proper virtual machines. Okay, now what this container orchestration is doing is, schedules a container to physical virtual machines, restarts containers if they stop, provide private container network, scale up and scale down, service discovery. Okay, so all these features are provided by container orchestration. Okay, now there are lot of container orchestrators like Docker Swarm is there, Kubernetes is there, Mesosphere is there, but all these three, okay, but in the market nowadays Kubernetes is the one which is used by every industry. Okay, it is very popular and it is used by lot of companies. Okay, so what is Kubernetes? In fact, it is developed in 2014, okay, and developed by Google. It's completely written in Golang, okay, and now it is given to the Linux Foundation, okay, Cloud Native Foundation, and it's a completely open source now. Okay, now if you see the architecture of the Kubernetes is, we can have one master node and then we can have multiple worker nodes. So master node will work as an orchestrator and the worker node will be the actual node where all the containers are running. Okay, so in the Kubernetes we have one logical entity called pods. Okay, pod is nothing but a single container, or inside pod we can have multiple containers as well. Okay, so if you see on the master node there are some controlling parameters, like we have a controller manager, scheduler is there, and then there is a database manager that's called etcd to store everything, and then there is a single point of contact called API server. Okay, so that means what is happening here. And on the worker node, there are a lot of components, like we have a kubelet, kubeproxy, and then the Docker. Okay, so Docker is required because to start the pods, okay, we need a Docker. So how this flow works, this kubelet will continuously in talk with the master node, and it will continuously keep updating what is happening on the worker node to the master node. So master node can continuously have an update what is happening with this worker node. Now let's say I give the Docker Compose file to the kubectl, it will provide to the API server. Let's say I want to start the 2 pods, okay, or one pod which contains 2 containers. Okay, now API server with the help of scheduler means whatever the information is provided by kubelet to the API server, it will give to the etcd, providing to the etcd. Then API server will go to the scheduler, it will ask where I should start these 2 containers. Okay, then scheduler will go back to the etcd, it will fetch all the details of all the worker nodes. With the help of some algorithm, it will check which is the best node to start all this start to this 2 container. Okay, then it will select one best worker node, and then with the help of API server it will pass this request to the kubelet. Okay, now kubelet got the request that I need to start these 2 containers. Then with the help of Docker it will start those containers. Okay, and then with the help of kubeproxy it will provide the network to those containers. Okay, so this is how typical Kubernetes workflow works. Okay, we'll go see more detail in the next video about the Kubernetes. Okay, so what is Kubernetes pod? So Kubernetes pods are the smallest deployable unit of a computing that can be created, managed, and in Kubernetes. Okay, so pod, as discussed, it's just a logical entity. Okay, it's a group of 1 or more containers. Pods are always co-located and co-scheduled and run in a shared context. Okay, now shared context of pod is a set of Linux namespaces and C groups. Okay, this is what we discussed in the first couple of slides, right? Containers within a pods shares the same IP address and pod space and find each other using localhost. Okay, the containers which are inside a single pod, they are having the same IP address, they can be accessed with the localhost. Okay, and they can communicate with each other using a standard interprocess communication protocol. Okay, now what is replication controller? With the help of Kubernetes, what we can do is we can scale up, scale down your application. We can create multiple replicas of your application in the form of pods. Okay, so to manage this, okay, to manage this controls, means to control this everything, whether the expected replicas of that application are running out there or not, with the help of replication controller, it will continuously keep watch on those number of pods. Okay, if due to some reason one of the pod goes down, in that case this replication controller will automatically start a new pod, okay, to maintain that number. Okay, now what is deployment? Deployment provides updates for pods and replica set. Replica sets is the next generation of the replication controller. So this replica set is nothing but the next generation of replication controller, nothing else. You only need to describe a desired state in deployment object. Deployment controller will change actual state to desired state. You can define a deployments to create a new resource or replace existing ones. Okay, we'll see all this. Okay, all the pods, deployment, and the each and every component of Kubernetes in a next video. Okay, so till then, thanks.